everyone. Welcome to another day of Crosswinds Church at Home. I'm Sarah, and I am so glad that you are here. We come to this time of worship together following another week of turmoil in our country and in our world. We continue to see the harmful effects of racism, violence, and a global pandemic, creating opportunity after opportunity for grief and mourning. Pausing to worship can feel strange amidst all this chaos. But I want to say that this is precisely the right response for us as followers of God, to pause, to lift our eyes to worship, and to let worship lead us to repentance, and also to be better equipped to love God and love our neighbors. Please stand with me and join us as we worship.
My God is still in control, and still He reigns on His throne. Though mountains may tremble and sea billows roll, I sing it is well with my soul. My God is still in control. Sing it as well. It is well with my soul. It is well with my soul. home, the sea billows roll. I'll sing it is well with my soul, 'cause my God is still in control. My God is still in control. Well, I want to teach you a new song today. And this song talks about there being no higher name than Jesus' name, that he reigns above it all. So we're going to take these lyrics and we're going to sing them out. Here we go. The reign of darkness now has ended, and the kingdom of light, in the kingdom of light, forever under your dominion. You're the king of my life, you're the king of my life. You reign above it all, you reign above it all. Over the universe and over every heart, there is no higher name. Jesus, you reign above it all. On the cross, the work was finished. God, you poured out your life just to give us new life. From the lips of the forgiven, hear an anthem arise. 'Cause Jesus, you're alive. Hey! You reign above it all, you reign above it all. Over the universe and over every heart, there is no higher name. Jesus, you reign above it all. Let all of heaven and the earth erupt in song. Sing hallelujah to the everlasting one. There is no higher name. Jesus, you reign above it all. Oh, you reign above it all. Sing, you set the darkness running. Sing this out. Oh, you set the darkness running out of an empty grave. Now seated alone in glory, enthroned on the highest praise. And you set the darkness running out of an empty grave. Now seated alone in glory, throned on the highest praise. You set the darkness running out of an empty grave. Now seated alone in glory, throned on the highest praise. You set the darkness running out of an empty grave. Now seated alone in glory, throned on the highest praise. You set the darkness running out of an empty grave. above it all. Let all of heaven and the earth erupt in song. Sing hallelujah to the everlasting one. There is no higher place. Jesus, you reign above it all. Oh, you reign. Oh, you reign, you reign, you reign. And I know who I am, 'cause I'm loved by you, oh God. And I know you're in control, oh God. Oh, you're still in control, my Father. God, we're gonna stake our hope in that. We're gonna put our confidence in that. And no matter what happens around us, you're in control, God. That there is no higher name than yours, Lord, even now, Father God. Amen, God. You are so faithful. You are so good. You are so mighty, God. Oh.
Well, hello Crosswinds and happy Sunday or Monday or Tuesday or whenever you get around to watching this video. We're glad you're here with us either way. Well, we're starting a new series this week on character, and we thought what better way to explore this idea than to test some of your kids and their character. So we asked you to set up a little experiment at home where you get a bowl of candy and you set it out in front of your child, and then you just walk away and tell them not to eat the candy until you get back. We also asked you to set up a secret camera to film this, and hilarity ensued. So go ahead and take a look at how well your kids did with character.
Okay, so I have a treat for both of you girls, but you cannot touch it until I come back. Daddy and I are gonna go back in our room for a minute. Don't eat it until we come back.
I want the one with brown ones, because I like brown ones better.
See? These are for you, but wait until, nope, wait.
Don't touch them. I'm gone. Mom, make a ball. Make a ball.
Did you wait? You waited for me? Good job! High five!
You didn't eat any? Kenzie, did you eat any?
Nope.
Ooh, that's
I'm
pretty.
hungry.
Do you like that game?
Did you touch the cupcake?
No.
Okay, you can have some now.
Good job!
Good job. Yummy!
Yay!
Now, just like the kiddos in that video, we know that what we do when no one is looking says a lot about us. Today, we're kicking off a new series on character called The Object in Motion is You. What we'll be learning about together is how our character, the foundation for our whole life and for all of our relationships, is vitally important and is also constantly evolving. This series will follow Psalm 15 toward a deep look at what moves us forward in being people of good character. And Jodi will be joining us to teach on that in just a few minutes. Well, as I said before, my name is Sarah, and I want to take a few moments to tell you about some of the things happening at Crosswinds this week. This month for Neighbor's Closet, we are collecting donations of new bottles of vegetable oil. If you are watching this on Sunday, you still have time to donate. Just bring those by the church by the end of the day to be part of this effort. You know, we've been paying careful attention to our country and our county's health and safety precautions, and we are so thrilled to announce that our church property is now open for groups of less than 12. So small groups, that means you can reserve one of our many beautiful outdoor spaces and host your group in person again. Like we mentioned in the past, if your group isn't ready for that quite yet, or if you have sick or at-risk folks in your group, you are of course welcome to continue meeting virtually. But we are so happy to welcome groups back to meeting on campus. If you'd like to do that, we have outdoor spaces all over campus that will be set up and sanitized for you. Simply email me at groups@crosswindschurch.org to reserve your spot. As always, we have several ways to give. You can text the number on the screen, you can give online through our website, or you can mail in a check. We are so grateful for the way that you, our church family, have adjusted to our changing world and continue to give and support the work that is always happening here at Crosswinds. We are so thankful for you. Well, like I said, today we are starting our new series, The Object in Motion is You. Something I never thought I'd say during church, but you know what Newton's first law of motion is, right? It has to do with an object in motion and how it tends to stay in motion. But that's about as far as I can explain it. So now I'm going to turn it over to an expert to tell us a little more.
Hey there, all my super scientists! Thanks to a video tutorial that I watched on the YouTube, I learned how to record and post my own science videos. Wait, hold on just a second. Let me just adjust this really quick right here. Get this. That's better. Hey, super scientists! I'm Dr. Fizzle, coming to you from my in-home laboratory to bring you this week's Super Science Fizzle facts. First things first. The word of the day is momentum. Let's say it together. Mo-men-tum. In science, we write it like this. Mass times velocity, that's speed, equals P. Now what does P stand for? Proton? No. Plutonium? I wish. It stands for momentum. Why does P stand for momentum? Why does P stand for momentum? Note to self. Google why P stands for momentum. But it all comes down to movement. The movement of a thing through space. The laws of motion tell us that movement is affected by how big a thing is, that's the thing that's moving, and how fast the thing is going. Take this toy. It's called a Newton's cradle, named after my hero, Sir Isaac Newton. But it was named by my other hero, 1960s English actor Simon Preble. This simple mechanism shows potential energy turned into kinetic energy. And the momentum just keeps going, switching directions until gravity is the only force that can slow down the ball. And I am the only one that can silence it. When the first ball of Newton's cradle collides with the second, the first ball stops. But the momentum isn't lost. It's transferred to the second, then to the third, fourth, fifth, sixth, and to the very last ball. Then the last ball swings into the air with nearly the same momentum as the first. Thus, if two balls are lifted into the air and released on one end, then two balls on the opposite side will swing in response, like this. Isn't it amazing? I gotta go see my experiment! See you next time!
Well, as shelter in place begins to ease and we start to emerge from our homes back into the world, I've been thinking a lot about the things that have kind of kept us connected during quarantine. And one thing our staff does is we share interesting things we're watching and reading to pass the time during shelter in place. And it is just fascinating. And so I thought I would share with you a little bit of what our staff is doing to pass the time, besides working, of course. Derek Walker, our creative arts pastor, Derek, he has been reading a biography on Jim Henson that he says is totally changing his life, and I think that is fascinating. Josh Piney, our children's ministry director, he's been watching a show called Somebody Feed Phil, which is a food documentary series, and he's also watching some crazy show about World War II called Man in the High Castle. Matt Van Gent, our executive pastor, oh my gosh, Matt is a reading machine. He has been binge reading historical nonfiction books. He just finished a book about the great influenza of 1918. And I thought, I don't even know why you'd have to read that, Matt, because we're kind of living it right now, right? And he's also reading a book called The Bodyguard of Lies, which is about World War II, and then just a bunch of other ones that I don't even have time to mention to you today. Crosswinds, you need to know that I work with some really smart and interesting people, and I love them dearly. But I will never, ever share what I am watching or reading, because I am telling you, it's not that. But for the sake of getting to teach you God's word today, I will share with you the trash that I watch. Okay, the way that I have been passing my time while sheltering in place is by binge watching reality shows on Bravo TV. I cannot help myself. I absolutely love it, particularly the show Below Deck. It is this lame show that follows the lives of people who work on these luxury yachts, and it documents their dysfunction and their relational drama, and it is so good. And I love all of them. I love Below Deck. I love Below Deck Mediterranean, and their latest installation is Below Deck Sailing Yacht. I love them all. And so the other night, my husband Ernesto and I were watching the season premiere of Below Deck Mediterranean, of course. And as we're watching it, he says, "Did you know that Hannah, the chief stewardess, she gets fired this season?" And I'm like, "What?" Well, it's about time, because she's like terrible. She's terrible. She's mean and she's lazy. And internally, I thought, I'm really looking forward to seeing this. Well, the next morning when I woke up, this firing on Below Deck is really all I could think about. And so I went downstairs to grab my laptop, and I Google why Hannah got fired from the show. And it hit me as I'm sitting in my office Googling this at 8 a.m. on a Saturday morning that I might have hit quarantine rock bottom. True. It also hit me that I might have a problem. And here's the thing I came to realize as I was preparing for this talk. Other people's lack of character bothers me than my own lack of character. Other people's lack of character bothers me more than my own lack of character. You see, character is what I want everyone I live with and everyone I work with and everyone I do business with to have. But somehow my binge watching, like these cringe-worthy moments in someone else's life, it never motivates me to develop my own character. And you know why? It's because I think I already have character. I've already got it. And I think it's those people who don't have it. And I think that's why reality TV is so entertaining. You get to watch other people make bad decisions, and then you get to think about what you would tell them and how you would do things differently. Because we already believe that we are people of character. And I'm telling you, this just doesn't play out as you watch reality TV. It plays out everywhere in our lives. And you know where I think it kind of plays out the most? In parenting. We are conditioned as parents to stamp out the character flaws in our children. I know I've been conditioned to do that. I'm going to stamp out the character flaws in my kids, and I am going to point out their decisions and how their decisions are not leading them down a good path. My children's perceived lack of character, it motivates me to do something about them. I will point out their flaws to them and ask them to sit and think about what they should evaluate in themselves. But I am so less willing to do that for myself. Okay, think about this. If I told you there was a character development school opening up in the Tri-Valley and you could sign up anyone, and they would have to go if you sign them up, how many of you could come up with maybe 5 names right now? Just off the top of your head. I know, it's easy, right? You can do it, simple. I was gonna have you turn to the person next to you and give them one name on your list, but then I decided not to because one of the names might actually be the person that you're sitting next to. And so here's the question I have for you out of this. How many of us would put our own name on that list? My guess is that not many of us would put our own name down. And I think the biggest reason we don't add ourselves to that list is that we already believe that we're people of character. Character development is for you. It's for everybody else. Me? I've already got it. Okay, so let's assume that we, you and I, we already are people of character. Here's my question. How do you know that what I view as character and what you view as character are the same thing? Okay, let's do this. What I want you to do right now is turn to the person next to you and tell them what character is in one sentence. And if you're by yourself, you can kind of just tell your screen what character is in one sentence, okay? But right now, turn to the person next to you and tell them what character is in one sentence. I'm giving you 5 seconds. Ready? Go. Okay, we're back. So what did you hear? Some of you might have said, hey, you know what? You are a person of character if you treat people well. Or you're a person of character if you stand up for what you believe. Or maybe you're a person of character if you tell the truth. Maybe some of you said, you know what, I don't even know, I gotta think about this for a little bit. This is a big ask to define what character is. And maybe for some of you, there was just silence and you didn't even know what to say. And the thing is, I think for as many people who answered that question, that's how many different definitions of character we have. And I think that is the biggest problem we have when it comes to character development. How do you develop something that is a moving target? Because for each person who defines it, it's subject to their personality, their mood, their background, that maybe their economic status, even a religious affiliation. And the list is endless. And I think it just presents for us a huge problem. Okay, everybody agrees that character is important, right? It's something everyone expects from other people. But without a clear definition that unifies us, without a target for us to shoot for, we are easily deceived into thinking that we are men and women of character and that it's everyone else who has a problem and that it's our job to make them comply to our definition. And Crosswinds, I want to tell you today that that only leads to tragedy. When character becomes subjective, subject to what I want and what I think is right, when my definition of character and your definition of character, they collide, there will always be casualties. And the casualties are always our relationships, every single time. Every one of you listening, you can speak to the incredible pain and heartbreak that comes when there has been a character collision in a relationship, right? A character collision is what happens when what I think is character and what you think is character collide because we're expecting our versions of character out of each other. Whether it's in a marriage or a working relationship or business partnership or even a parent-child relationship, when character is subjective, our relationships suffer because we're trying to force our version of what is right onto someone else. And so today we clearly have a lot to talk about when it comes to character, which is why today we are starting a new series called The Object in Motion is You. And I love the title of this series because the object in motion is you. First of all, the focus of this series is not going to be me. It's going to be you. You're going to focus on your character and not someone else's. The second reason I love the title of this series because it centers around the idea that your character, it's not static. It is always in motion. In every situation and relationship you find yourself in, there's always an opportunity to move toward character development or away from it, but there is never a moment in time where you are standing still. But in order for us to know if we're moving in the right direction, we need to be able to answer these two questions. First one, what is character? The second one, how do I live it out in my life? And so throughout this series, we're going to answer those questions, and we are going to do that by using Psalm 15 as our guide. And in using this psalm and a few other verses, we're going to look at what character truly is, and we're going to see how we can develop it, and we are going to look at the specific ways that you can live it out in your life. So as we start today, I want to give you the definition of character that we are going to be working with throughout this series. And just so you know that it's not a subjective definition, we are going to build our definition of character from Scripture. So it's God's words and not mine that are going to lay the foundation for our definition. So here's the passage we are going to use for our definitions. Colossians 1:16, and it says this. It says, "For in him all things were created, things in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or powers or rulers or authorities, all things have been created through him and for him." Okay, so I know exactly what you're thinking right now. You're thinking this passage does not look like it has anything to do with character. Where do you find a definition in that passage? Well, in his book, Louder Than Words, The Power of Uncompromised Living, Andy Stanley points out that there are two facts about God in this passage that matter for our character definition. And here they are. Fact number one, God is the creator of all things. Fact number one, God's the creator of all things. Fact number two is that you belong to him. Okay, so watch this. He says that based on these two basic facts, God's creative power and his ownership over our lives, we can deduce that only God has the right to define what integrity is. And we, as his creation, we are obliged to live according to the tenets that he has outlined for us. Again, why? Because he is the creator of all things, and we belong to him. And so if we are building a definition of character based on the facts of this passage, our definition of character, it has to look something like this. Take a look. Character is the will to do what is right as defined by God, regardless of personal cost. I'm going to read that again. Character is the will to do what is right, the willingness to do what is right, as determined by God, regardless of personal cost. In other words, Crosswinds, because God is sovereign and because we belong to him, he gets to set the bar. He is the one who determines what is right and good. And the hard thing about it is that sometimes godly character is going to cost you something. Doing the right thing as defined by God, it can hurt sometimes. It is costly to tell your boss that you messed up rather than throw someone else under the bus. That's the easy thing to do. It costs you something to tell the person that you are seeing that this relationship isn't right for you because it's toxic and you don't like who you are in it. It is costly to tell your family that you're making decisions about your future that they might not agree with, maybe because they are afraid or they don't understand. Godly character says, I'm going to do what's right, even if it costs me everything. And I think that's why this series is so important. Being able to say this is not easy. We don't just wake up one day and we're able to do this. Character is like a muscle that you have to flex and exercise in order to develop it. Because it's so much easier for me to live by my own internal grid than to submit myself to someone else's, let alone a grid that is going to cost me something. And honestly, Crosswinds, not many people get to a place in their life where they can live by that kind of grid. But as people who are supposed to be a reflection of God's image in this world, we need to be willing to submit ourselves to God's internal grid for how we're supposed to live, because our relationships, our families, our communities, our world is really depending on it. Well, if character is the will to do what is right as defined by God, regardless of personal cost, then the next logical question, at least in my mind, is how does God define what is right? Like, what's the grid, right? How do we know we're getting character right? Well, this is where our passage for the series comes in. The book of Psalms has one of the most explicit, in a good way, explicit statements we have in the Old Testament on the subject of character, and it is found in Psalm 15. This is the passage we're going to use for our grid and the passage we're going to use for our series. And so over the next few weeks, we're going to dig into Psalm 15 and come up with a strategy and a plan for character development. And so I want to introduce you to it and explain a few things before we do a deep dive next week, okay? So here's how the psalm starts. Psalm 15:1. Lord, who may dwell in your sacred tent? Who may live on your holy mountain? And so this psalm, it starts with a single question asked by a guy named David, and then the rest of the psalm answers the question. And the answer to the question, it comes in the form of a list of character traits. The verses that come after the question list a bunch of character traits. And I'm not going to read them to you because these are the traits that we're going to examine over the next few weeks, but I want you to see what they are. But the psalm starts with a very important question, and the question is, Lord, who may dwell in your sacred tent? Who may live on your holy mountain? Okay, let me explain. In the Old Testament, there was this thing called the tent of meeting, and the Hebrews believed that God kind of lived in this tent, and it was the place where anyone who wanted to talk to God or inquire of him, they would go to the tent. And the tent of meeting was located on a place called Mount Zion, which was called the Holy Mountain, as we see in that passage, because it was seen as the place where God lived. But not everyone who wanted access to God could have access to God at that time. And as you hear that, it might sound weird to hear that not everyone could have access to God, because this isn't the picture of God we normally use around here, we normally talk about around here at Crosswinds. But keep in mind that this was written at a time when access to God was really kind of based on your obedience and the purity of your character. But we know that from the New Testament in Jesus, through his death on the cross, he grants us direct access to God, and that our access to him is no longer based on our character, but on grace. But it doesn't change the fact that God now and God then had a heart for who we are as people. It matters to him. This passage shows us that our character matters. And so David asks, he says, God, who is qualified to dwell with you? Who gets to enter the tent? Who gets to come to your meeting? While we were doing distance learning, my boys did a ton of Zoom meetings for their classes, so many, in fact, that I had to make a list of all their meeting IDs and passwords because inevitably someone would lose one and we'd have to have a place where we could go find them, because you cannot access your class without the meeting ID and the password, okay? Well, as much as I don't like the fact that we're having to Zoom everything right now, my favorite part of watching them Zoom was that after they entered the meeting ID and password, all of the faces of their little classmates would pop up and they would tile the screen, and I loved watching them laugh with their classmates and meet face to face, kind of. And I can't help but think that this is the kind of thing that is happening in this passage. David is saying, God, what's the ID and password to your Zoom? How do I get to see your face pop up on my screen? And God answers him with a list of meeting IDs and passwords. Only this list is not numbers and letters, it's a list of character traits. And what he essentially tells David is only the person of character gets to enter my meeting. Only the person who lives this way and they get to meet with me. Your character is the thing that will grant you access. You see, God is so into character that back then he said the only people who have it, only those people get to meet with me face to face. Why? Because God likes to keep good company? Maybe. But I think the bigger reason is that the person who has this kind of character is the person who most accurately reflects God's image to the world and not someone else's. Crosswinds, this is the list of character traits that we're going to look at over the next few weeks and use to build a character strategy of development. And let me just say this. I think it is so essential that we are taking this time to look at our character, because the world we are re-entering as shelter in place is being lifted, it is not the world that we lived in a few months ago. And I don't even need to tell you that. It's a little bit of a mess. And I think that one of the reasons it is such a mess is because our culture has allowed character to be subjective. Everyone is so busy forcing everyone else to live by their definitions of character that we are seeing character collisions everywhere, and relationships are in ruins. But we have an opportunity to change that and to be part of the solution. Instead of expecting people to yield to our ideas of what character should look like, we get to enter the world and be a reflection of God's. And so, Crosswinds, I'll admit that this series could either be the most judgmental series we have ever done, if every time you enter these teachings, you're thinking about someone else and how someone else could change. Or this could be the most life-changing, transformational experience if you allow yourself to enter it humbly and ask God to shape you. And so this week, I wonder what it would be like for you to spend some time talking with God about your character. Maybe there are some things that you need to reprioritize. Or maybe there's an area of your life where you are really struggling to do what's right because it might cost you something. You know what a great exercise might be? Go to someone close to you and ask them, hey, you know what do you think of my character? Where can I grow? And then just listen, take it to God, and see what he has to say about it. And then tune in next week as we continue in our series. Let me pray for you. God, we submit ourselves to you today. We humble ourselves before you with such an opportunity to look at ourselves right now. God, I ask that you would help us to be brave and be strong as we look at the areas of our life that maybe we don't want to look at, that you would help us see the course corrections that we need to make when it comes to our own character. And I pray that you would give us compassion as we look upon other people and deal with other people whose character may not be up to our standards. May we realize that we are all a work in progress. Our world needs to see a reflection of you right now. And I ask you that you would help us be part of that solution. We thank you for being a good God. In your name we pray. Amen. Thanks, everyone. We will see you next time.